Hey, so this is a very weird video to be making, but I'm going to make it, and it's probably going to be a jumbled mess. But I'm emboldened by an email that somebody wrote me a couple days ago. So if you see this and you recognize your email, thank you very much. Somebody wrote to me and said that I'm bridging the gap between manifestation and real life. And that was really helpful, because one of the most annoying things in my life, truly, is not really knowing why I'm making this channel. I go from one thing to another. I'm like, well, I'm doing this to help people. That's not really it. That's not really it. And then I'm like, well, okay, so then on the other end of the spectrum, I'm doing this selfishly because I want to, because it helps me to talk through things, because I like having a YouTube channel, because I like having a subscriber count that validates my existence or whatever. But that's not really it either. I mean, there's definitely an element of that. I talk to myself all day long, so I work everything out verbally, out loud. So recording some of it really isn't that difficult, and then making a YouTube channel with it, and then getting emails from people telling me that it's helping them. So, I mean, there's definitely an element of that, but I just never really know what I'm doing here. I see some kind of a need. I see like a part of the manifestation market that is being underserved, and I'm like, somebody needs to fill in that gap. And that, I think that person's email helped me to see that this is like a, you know, I'm kind of trying to be the liaison between the wild out there ideas and what it actually means for in practice in real life, which I have kind of a lot of experience with at this point, which is why I'm talking about it. I've been doing this stuff. I mean, this has basically been a lifelong observation for me, you know. But so, as you already know, I'm sure from the title of this video, I wanted to talk about something. Obviously don't know what the title is yet, but it'll be titled something that I'm sure reveals the content. I wanted to talk about something unusual that I don't usually talk about here. I have had a totally insane last few days, like 3 days. For those of you who don't live in the US or who don't watch any reality TV, I'm not a reality TV person at all. I used to watch some seasons of like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette like 15 years ago, but I'm just not a TV person, really. Not a reality TV person, and not much of a TV person in general. I got really into the show Sister Wives. It's like one of the only reality TV shows that I watch. And I've watched it. I've watched the entire thing from when it started. I was really interested in it because I was a huge fan of the show Big Love. I think that was an HBO show back in the day with Bill Paxton. I loved that show. I watched that show, you know, all the way through, whatever. And so when the show Sister Wives came out, you know, maybe less than a decade later, I was like, oh, wow, this is the reality version of that TV show. So if you're not familiar with it, Sister Wives, for almost, I don't know, it's like 15 years plus at this point, has followed the lives of this polygamist Mormon fundamentalist family in Utah. And it consists of this guy and started out with his 3 wives that he'd already been married to for 15 to 20 years, huge family already. And then he's like, at the beginning of the show, he is dating who becomes his 4th wife. And so I watched this show for the last like 20 years or whatever, 15 years. And all the kids, there's 18 kids in the family eventually. And you know, it's so wholesome. They're religious. They're real people. This is one of the, I'm sure parts of the show are scripted, just like all reality TV shows are scripted. And, but you know, they're the realest reality people that I've personally watched. And, so I'm going to have to spoil some of the show. I don't know. Sorry if you're going to, I would really, The conclusion of this video, I think, eventually is going to come to don't involve yourself in this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and spoil what happens. And so if you really are interested in watching the show, or you haven't gotten to this, you haven't watched the whole show, then I guess just leave this video. But the father, the patriarch of the family, you know, the wife he really loves and wants and has a traditional type of American romantic relationship with is this fourth wife, who is much younger, in much better shape. You know, it's just kind of like they fell in love. And as a result, over the years, you just sort of watch this family splinter apart. The original three wives, who are awesome. I mean, I really love this whole family. It's weird. The original three wives, you know, it just becomes more and more distant. It becomes more obvious that, you know, this fourth wife is the favored wife. And when COVID happened, it really broke the whole family up, because for one reason or another, the patriarch of the family, the husband, chooses to essentially live with the fourth wife the entire time. And through, you know, a bunch of mental gymnastics, in my opinion, why do I even have an opinion? I don't know. I guess everybody's got one, right? Through a bunch of mental gymnastics, he's justified this. You know, it's like he can't admit to himself that he loves this fourth wife. I mean, he eventually does. Spoiler. He can't admit to himself that this is the woman he really wants to be with. And so he comes up with all these excuses for, you know, why he can't be with the other wives during COVID. They're not following his crazy rules that he made up. And it ends up sort of, one part of his family really gets embroiled in it. He has two sons during COVID were like early 20s, like 19 and 21 or something. And they continued to work and see their girlfriends and stuff like that. And, you know, that all got embroiled in this guy's mental gymnastics to justify just sort of staying away, in my opinion. You know, of course, this is just an opinion of a person watching the show, so pretty irrelevant and irrelevant to this video. But anyway, a few days ago, one of those two sons took his own life, and the other one of those two found him. And it just so happens that these are the kids of the sister wife that I like the most. The one that I mean, I don't know. I love them all. It's like impossible not to love this whole family. I even like the father and the fourth wife, really. Because I get that they're just, you know, it was just the outcome of this situation was obvious from day one. It was still sickening watching it, though. I mean, it was just clear. It's so clear that the initial events of the show logically lead to what ends up happening. And they're just trying to like justify it all. But so this one middle child, like one, you know, kind of like one of the 18 kids, one of the middle, right in the middle of all these kids, took his own life a few days ago. And I have been surprisingly fucked up by this. It's surprising to me, sort of, that I have been so fucked up by this. And I wanted to talk about this. It's super relevant. I mean, anything having to do with psychology is it couldn't be more relevant to manifesting and how you create the things in your life. I mean, the one little element of manifesting that is sort of outside of your typical psychology is just the idea that there is sort of a divine assistant. There's a divine, like God is helping you, or you can have whatever you want, because even if it doesn't appear possible, a way will be made. And currently, you know, I think most of us default to that's God helping, or some other type of, you know, I don't think most people are going to, you know, a more mundane explanation for that. So there's this little element of manifesting that is sort of outside of psychology. Everything else is psychology. Everything else is you, how you handle your life and how you've processed everything that's happened to you and all of that. And so, so I wanted to talk about this. The last few days have been really surprising. I've been thinking about the mother of this guy constantly and just feeling sick to my stomach. I feel like it's somebody I know. And what's funny about this is, and I just kind of caught this because I'm so far away from how I used to be in this regard that I didn't even realize I was really doing it. Because in my mind, this still isn't someone I know. So there was a divide there. In my 20s, like 20 years ago, a lot of you are going to be able to relate to this. 20 years ago, around now, so I'm 24, 25, let's say, I used to lose entire days to over-empathizing with other people's pain. If something bad was going on to somebody I knew, it would make me sick. I would think about it constantly. And just, even though it had nothing to do with me, it didn't affect me, it ruined my mental state, sometimes for days. And same thing for like, if somebody did something humiliating, I would just like experience that humiliation firsthand. I just used to feel the emotions of other people, at least I thought I did. I mean, they were really just how I would feel if it happened to me. But so I was wasting all of this precious energy experiencing what I imagined somebody else was experiencing. And really it was just me experiencing it as though it was already happening to me. And thus it served me no function. I was basically living large parts of my life experiencing negative things that weren't even happening to me. And I just know that, like, everyone listening to this, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to realize how often you do stuff like this, even if you're not an over empathizer. But I think a lot of people in this manifesting community are over empathizers. You know, they like to call themselves empaths. So maybe I could call myself a recovering empath. But here's what I did to stop that. This is very important. This was life-changing. First of all, I logically thought about it. I caught it, first of all. I became aware that I was doing it from more of an outsider perspective. And I also admitted to myself that it was not beneficial. You know, a lot of people think it's such a great thing to, empathize with others, and it is to a degree. And empaths take this just way, and, I think a lot of empaths think that that's just the way they are, when really it's just that you haven't snapped out of it yet. I think it's a good place to start. It's better to start with too much empathy than too little, if you ask me. But I logically, worked it out in my mind that this is not beneficial. It's not good for me. It's not helping anyone else. There's no value in this. Me being somebody who does this doesn't define me in a positive way. This isn't a good thing about me that I don't want to lose. Of course I don't want to go to the other end of the spectrum, and you have to be careful with that. But first I worked out that this is not good. This isn't a way that is beneficial to me or anyone. So this is providing no benefit. The only logical conclusion to come from that is to stop doing it. If it's not benefiting anyone, then it's the definition of stupidity to continue to do it. So then the question becomes, how do you stop? And the way I worked that out was, in the moment, when I can, this is key for everything, when I became aware that I was doing that, and sometimes it can be very hard, you're feeling an emotion, you're thinking thoughts about whatever's causing the emotion, and you can get lost in that, sometimes for a long time. Becoming aware, and in that moment, you have to be able to parent yourself. You have to be able to tell yourself something to shift your focus, to shift, your thoughts and feelings. And what I started to do, and it worked really, really quickly for me, I would say within a year, this was completely resolved. I told myself, this is not my pain to feel. It's not my pain to feel. I have my own pain in this life that I'm going to have to feel and deal with. Somebody else's pain is not mine to feel. I'm not providing a benefit. So just reminding myself of the truth of the situation and then stopping it. And sometimes, if you're somebody who is like really deep into this kind of thing, at first you're going to have to remind yourself of this a lot. And eventually, you're going to start to feel relief because it doesn't feel good to feel that way. And at first you might have some feeling of guilt or something for allowing yourself to not feel bad about something that someone else is going through. But I promise when you get to the other side, you'll realize that if it was just void of any value, and that you actually are much more valuable to people who are going through really difficult times if you can keep yourself up and keep your own vibe up, keep your own thoughts and feelings up. Sinking down there with them, you just become somebody else who needs to be helped. So over the last few days, I didn't even realize this because it wasn't somebody close to me. And, I nearly never do this with strangers. I have fallen back into that. It's like, I just keep thinking about everybody in that family and how difficult it's going to be for them. And especially the father who, if he can even get to the point where he realizes that he was central to this whole thing happening, not necessarily the event of this week, but the whole breakup of the family and everything. If he can ever even get to the point where he realizes he did anything wrong, I mean, that man is going to have to live the rest of his life knowing that he never has a chance to rectify the situation with the kid that is now gone, who he was estranged from for a couple years now. It's just so devastating. The whole thing is so devastating. And this whole week I've just been thinking about, not this whole week, whatever. This happened on, I think, Wednesday. So for the last few days, I've just been thinking about this nonstop. It's just been crazy. And yesterday and the night before, I haven't been like losing my shit over it or anything. I haven't been, outwardly, overly emotional, but this has been like in my existence. I've been thinking about it a lot. And last night and the night before, I just had this intense physical anxiety in my body that I couldn't quite attribute it to that, but it's the only thing that I can think of. Towards the end of the day, just this anxiety. Like I had to take a Benadryl on Thursday night. It's Saturday morning. I had to take a Benadryl because I was just like, God, I can't stop. I'm like feeling short of breath. I was like thinking, am I having a heart attack? And it's this overly experiencing, somebody else's pain. This is something that is vital to get figured out for yourself. If what you're interested in is manifesting and all these concepts, this is a big one. This is a big one because getting control of your thoughts and your focus and your emotions is at the heart of all of this. So yeah, I slipped back into that for the last couple of days without even realizing really what it was, by just kind of allowing my mind to go where it wanted to go. And, this is just one example of the ways that people do this on a day-to-day basis. If you're spending a lot of your time, on like the mainstream media news, or really any news, if you're doing that, that's another version of this. It's another version of this illusion. I mean, think about it. It's an illusion. The idea that feeling someone else's pain lessens their pain. The idea that being like informed up to the minute about world events that are being distorted through a medium that, you can't even necessarily rely on today. If these things are something that you're doing, you might want to consider completely blocking it out. Make a plan for yourself for what you need to do in order to be sufficiently prepared for whatever possible outcomes there could be in the world. and block that shit out. Like, ask yourself why you're paying attention to that. I think for most people, it comes from a place of fear. And it's like, if you're informed, then you're somehow more prepared for if something bad happens. When really that too is an illusion. The best way that you can prepare for any kind of potential world event happening or anything like that, anything really, is by being mentally healthy and stable. And second to that, I would say by getting your resources in order as much as you can. You know, for anybody who's concerned about world politics, world events, stuff that could happen, any of that, the best thing you could do is shut that off and focus on your own personal prosperity and elevation. You know, one of the things I think it pays to think about is that in any kind of negative world event that's happened, there have been lots of people who were unaffected. There have been lots of people who either moved themselves or were moved away from wherever it was happening, people who otherwise would have been involved. And there were people who, if everybody else was impacted negatively in some way, were impacted positively. Like, for example, I've mentioned this recently, so sorry if I'm repeating myself for anybody who's already heard this. This is not an attempt to brag about my financial situation. It literally never is. I wish I never had to talk about my financial situation here. You know, there was a global financial crisis in 2008. My very successful business was built during the years following that. During 2010 to 2014 were really the building years where my business grew and got very successful. And as a result, thanks to as a result, it's recession proof. As a result, I have a business that does very well when things aren't going great, and it does great the rest of the time when things are going great. You know, there's always opportunities available when things look dire. There are always opportunities available when things look dire. This is the circumstances don't matter part of the whole manifesting thing. It's really important to be careful what and who you are allowing to influence you if what you're trying to do is change something major about your life. It's those things that really can derail you. This is such a private thing. So private that as I'm saying that, I'm like, why am I making a video about it then? Why am I making a YouTube channel? It really is a private thing. When you're trying to make a big change, allowing others to tell you how to do it or to confuse you with, ideas about things that, might just be fantastical, stuff like that, that can really fuck everything up. So what do you do? I don't know. What do you do? Do you never watch TV? Do you never listen to the news? It's really up to you to figure out. I was really surprised at how affected I was by people I didn't know. And that I didn't see that coming at all. I was really surprised. I've realized today, that, it's not my pain to feel. It's somebody in the world is going through something really awful right now. Somebody who I'm aware of the existence of. There's always somebody going through that. There's always bad things happening to people. And whether they're creating it for themselves or not, who gives a shit? What difference does it make? You in this life will deal with things that are painful, That sort of goes with the territory. And when you do, you will have to deal with that pain, and nobody else will be able to deal with it for you. And those things that happen will be an opportunity for you to work your way out of that emotional state. And this is a really tough one. It's a really tough one. Limiting the outside influences and just unscrambling how you're supposed to deal with all of these daily emotional inputs so that you stay sane, stable, able to focus while still providing some sort of a human response to people, which, you also have to figure out what that means for you. Yeah. Anybody who says this shit's simple, I don't know. It's not simple. The concepts are simple. Putting it into practice, the user manual is simple. Going into the experience and figuring out, why am I feeling this way? Why am I having this reaction? Why is this thing in my life not working? How come I'm great in this area, but I'm terrible in this area? Well, this manifesting channel says that I shouldn't give any energy to anything having to do with my past. Well, this channel says, Neville Goddard says, you should look at that stuff and figure out how it affected you, because then you can change your mind about it. Then you can look at it a different way. Then you can feel a different way about it. Then you can stop reacting to your outer circumstances the way you've been acting this whole time and create something else. I don't know. It's really tough to sift through this stuff and figure out what it's supposed to mean for you. And this is just basically, these days how I spend my life. Every single thing at this point that happens, I'm looking at it through the lens of self-concept and manifesting. I mean, I did all of the, for like 20 years, I just intended for things, knew they would happen. They did. And that was great. And it wasn't until, 5 years ago that I started saying, okay, but why? Why does that work? And why aren't the things in my life, in this area working? Why is it that I can manifest everything in this area, but not in this area? That's when the self-concept stuff really came into play. And thankfully, I started reading Neville Goddard at that point, and it really answered a lot of questions for me. And everything since then has just been an attempt to, tease answers out of situations, like on the daily. It's kind of exhausting sometimes. But yeah. Navigating the emotional part of life can be challenging. But I wanted to talk about this particular situation that happened over the last few days, because for a long time I've wanted to talk to the empaths out there. It seems to me like a lot of empaths really wear that like a badge of honor, but it's not generally, I don't think it's generally a healthy thing for those people. And if you're kind of building your identity around that, you're building your identity around living your life in pain a lot of the time when you really don't need to be, and really aren't helping anybody by being that way. I know somebody out there heard this, and that's what's been on my mind the last few days. So that's what I have to say about this. And I hope you have a great day. And I hope that the Brown family is going to be able to heal from everything that's happened this week. It's so weird. And so many other people have expressed the same thing that I am, that they had no idea how much they cared about this family just from watching them on the show. I just, yeah, it's really hard. It really sucks that this has happened. It's so difficult. If you're entertaining any thoughts like that, please get help. Please call somebody. Please tell somebody. It's so permanent. It's a permanent solution to a temporary state of mind. One thing I learned from the comments section on something having to do with this over the last few days is that apparently these impulses to take your life only last like 30 minutes or something. So if you have a plan where you can get through those 30 minutes, whenever that happens, if you know who you're going to call and you know who you're going to call after that if they don't answer, and you know what you're going to do with yourself to get through that time, apparently it passes, which I did not know. I don't know a lot about that, but yeah, I don't know. It's really impactful. Every situation I've ever known of where somebody took their own life had a far-reaching impact, a far-reaching darkening of people's lives. And so, I don't know, please don't do that. Anyway, have a great day, and I don't know, I hope this provided some benefit to somebody.